The worst tape was labeled in my own handwriting before I'd ever touched a grease pencil to it. White letters on a black reel case, my initials in the corner, a date for the next day. I threaded it anyway. The reels turned. Then my own voice came through the speaker, low and out of breath. Don't open the cold room when the knocking starts. It isn't coming from inside. I ran the archive for Bellwether Township from 1998 until the flood closed the basement in 2006. It sounds important. It wasn't. I kept marriage ledgers, tax maps, church bulletins, and a dehumidifier that hummed like a held breath, day and night, whether anyone was listening or not. When Bellwether's AM station sold its building, the selectmen let me take anything marked historical. I ended up with 73 reel tapes in cardboard sleeves, mostly football broadcasts, farm reports, a mayoral debate where both men sounded half asleep. That winter, I fed them through a surplus TAC deck after 5, when the clerk's office wanted the basement quiet. Reel 14 had a blank sleeve, no dust on the hub, though the shelf beneath it was gray with it. I threaded it expecting static. Instead, I got a weatherman reading tomorrow's forecast. Hail at 3:10 in the afternoon, 20 hours before Bellwether saw a drop of it. I didn't panic. I wrote things down. That was the whole job, and the only habit I trusted. Start time, tape speed, condition of the leader. The forecast on reel 14 was dead accurate in that lazy, specific way only a local voice manages. Ice past the feed mill, a school board meeting running long, Deputy Morrow working a fender bender out on County 8. By noon the next day, all three had happened. I told myself somebody had recorded predictions after hours and gotten lucky with the weather. Then reel 15 turned up on the shelf the next morning, between 14 and 16, same blank sleeve, same stock. It carried the 6 o'clock obituaries for two people who were, when I listened, still very much alive. One of them was Ruth Haskell. She was dead by 4 the next afternoon in the frozen aisle at Priceway, half a mile from where I sat. I made myself one rule: listen once, warn no one. It sounds cold now. At the time, it felt like the only sane position left. Nobody in Bellwether was going to believe an archivist who said a machine from 1978 knew their death better than their doctor did. The tapes kept coming, one a morning, always exactly one day ahead, filed onto the shelf, sometime between when I locked the basement and when I unlocked it. Barn fires, dog bites, a kid's bike stolen off a porch on Ash Street. I started keeping them in a drawer I locked, out of some instinct I couldn't name. Then the tapes changed, less broadcast, more just sound, a door hinge, a checkout scanner beeping in an empty store. Reel 23 was 6 minutes of near silence, then one sentence, in my sister Ellen's voice. If he heard it coming, why didn't he stop it? She called that same night, from her apartment in Worcester. The station building on Maple Street still stood empty, waiting on a buyer. On my lunch break, I borrowed the key from the town administrator looking for wiring, some old feed lines still bleeding audio into my reels. The front office smelled of wet plaster and mouse droppings. The on-air studio had a clock stopped at 11:42, and a booth where old tape numbers had been penciled onto the shelf edge, erased, penciled again. On the bottom shelf sat a clean rectangle in the dust, exactly as long as my 73 boxes. Past the studio was a steel door marked for cold storage. Broadcast tape needs a steady temperature. The room should have been bare. Instead, it held a folding chair and a floor microphone on a stand, angled toward the chair like it was waiting for someone to sit and speak. The microphone cable ran into the wall through a hole packed with black caulk. When I pressed my thumb against it, the caulk was still soft. I did something stupid after that. I started using what I heard. Nothing dramatic. Checking the weather before scheduling a pickup. Taking Route 9 instead of County 8 the morning a truck jackknifed there. Calling in a burst pipe before the ceiling gave. Small mercies mostly for myself. But every time I acted on a tape, the next morning's reel had shifted at the edges. New footsteps. A rearranged sentence. Whatever was recording tomorrow had to work around what I'd already spent. Reel 31 had my own voice on it. Not an old recording, my current voice, tired, dry at the back of the throat. Put the flashlight down, it reacts to light. Another voice answered, male, whispering hard through his teeth. I knew the cadence from selectmen meetings, Deputy Morrow. Under both of us came a third sound. Not speech, not machinery. A slow, wet scraping, like something dragging one tooth of a rake across concrete, taking its time. The tape ended with the sound of me running. I brought Morrow in on Reel 32, not because I trusted him, but because his voice was already on my tape, and I wanted to watch his face when he heard it. He listened without a word. Big man, square jaw, a habit of tapping 2 fingers against his belt when he was thinking. He stopped tapping the second my voice came through. He was on his feet before his own whisper finished answering mine, the chair legs shrieking on the tile. He asked where I'd gotten it. I told him the truth. Basement shelf, 1 reel a morning, never explained. He didn't laugh. He asked for the station key. We went after dark, so no selectman would see the sheriff searching an empty building over a rumor. The back hall was cold enough to sting my teeth with the boiler dead. Morrow swept his flashlight into the cold room. The chair was gone. The microphone was gone. Only the drilled hole remained, and the caulk around it flexed inward, once, slow, like something on the other side had just taken a breath. We should have left. Instead, Morrow put his eye to the hole. He jerked back so hard he cracked his skull on the doorframe. When I asked what he'd seen, he kept staring at the wall, rubbing where he'd hit metal. Shelving, he said finally. Then, more shelving than that room could hold. He dug the caulk out with his pocket knife while I stood behind him. It came away in long black strings that kept twitching on the floor, like they were still cold enough to feel it. When the hole was clear, air came through carrying a smell I knew from ruined collections: acetate rot, wet cardboard, iron and mold, tape dying slowly on its own reel. The next morning, Reel 47 wasn't in my locked drawer. It was on my desk. My printing on the sleeve, my initials, a date for the next day. The grease pencil was still tacky under my thumb. I threaded it and heard my own voice say, calm as anything, don't open the cold room when the knocking starts. It isn't coming from inside. Then something started knocking on the wall behind me. Morrow came on the first knock. He hadn't gone home. He told me that later in his cruiser, heater roaring, neither of us looking at the other. He'd been parked outside town hall all night with a Halligan bar across his lap. The knocking came from behind the record shelving, not from any hallway. 3 hits, a pause, 3 more. Dry and hollow, like something testing how thick the wall really was. Reel 47 was still turning, playing our own breathing back at us, while the real knocks answered from inside the concrete. Morrow pried the shelving away and found a seam scored into the wall under decades of paint. The first swing of the bar cracked plaster. The second opened it 1/2 inch. Cold air came through first. Then a hand followed it, feeling along the edge of the gap. It was my hand. Same scar across the knuckle from a can opener in 1993. Same county issue watch, stopped dead. The skin had gone gray with frostburn, threaded through with brown oxide, like it had spent years pressed against old magnetic tape. Behind it, the opening kept going, shelves running back farther than the room could hold, stacked with black reels, and something moved slowly along them in the dark, reading labels with its fingers. Subscribe if you want to hear what's on Reel 48.